On Monday, we will see the Chargers take on the Broncos on Monday Night Football in a game that could really go in two very different directions. So, in this video, I want to talk about the 5 keys to success for the Chargers in their game against the Broncos on Monday. So, if that is something that you enjoy, please give me a like and subscribe. It truly means the world to me, and I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and I cannot do that without your guys' help. But let's not waste any more of your time. Let's go and get right into this. The 5 keys to success for the Chargers against the Broncos on Monday Night Football. Now, the first thing I want to cover here is going to be the Chargers cornerbacks against the Broncos wide receivers. So, with J.C. Jackson joining the fold this year, we expect a lot of great things for him right off the bat. But after getting surgery right before the season started, it seems like he started very slow, only playing 3 of the 5 games so far the Chargers have played, as well as definitely not looking at his full capabilities that we know he can reach. So, the Broncos, on the other side of things, have formed a very formidable wide receiver group duo in Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. Even with the offense not scoring touchdowns at a high level, they have collected a great share of yards and receptions through the receiving game in these two players. Courtland Sutton currently sits at tied for 6th in the entire league in receiving yards with 417. Jerry Jeudy also sits at 236 yards while only having played 3 full games so far this year. So, when both these guys are playing, honestly, they both played at consistent levels. Both these guys have had over 100 receiving yards in a single game, and on multiple occasions, they've both had over 50 receiving yards in the same game. So it's certainly not a one person at a time type of situation for the Broncos, but they found a pretty consistent duo that, competes at a high level when they're both playing as well as when they're playing by themselves. Now, so far, Asante Samuel Jr. has been looking like a top-level cornerback, but J.C. Jackson has been playing nowhere near his elite level for the Chargers and could face some challenges on Monday. Last week, we saw J.C. Jackson allow 5 receptions as well as a touchdown and a good chunk of yards. Asante Samuel Jr. has already got himself a couple interceptions, although some were overturned, and has been making some crucial tackles and some big breakups. But with Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton, we're going to need to see both of these guys slowed down. So the fact is that if J.C. Jackson or Asante Samuel Jr. aren't producing, this Broncos offense could get moving at a pretty solid level, and that's something we don't want to see. Now, even with Derwin James in the back and at safety, he could come into the box, come in at slot, do all these different places to help slow down one of these wide receivers if Asante and or J.C. Jackson aren't able to do it himself. But this is the perfect game where we need to see J.C. Jackson start to come into his own and see Asante Samuel Jr., play at a consistent level. Now, the next thing I want to cover here is going to be the Chargers' explosive offense going against a Broncos' really tough defense. So, the Chargers started the season slow on offense, as we all know, but after scoring 30 points last week and 34 in the week prior, it seems like they're starting to get some good momentum going with guys like Austin Ekeler, Mike Williams, all getting, consistently good games. Mike Williams has 2 games over 100 receiving yards, and Austin Ekeler now has back-to-back games with more than 1 touchdown, I think 2 and 3 each respectively. So they're both starting to get things moving. Entering a tough game, the Chargers currently sit at 5th in the league in yards per game offensively, with most of those coming from the receiving game, but the rushing game is definitely starting to get, a good grasp of things and get rolling, which could only bolster those numbers for the Chargers. And the Chargers also sit at 9th in points per game with 24.4 points per game, and the league average sitting somewhere around 22. And not only that, but they average 24.4 points per game with some, not great games prior, especially that Jaguars game where they only scored 10. So that number really has been skewed down a little bit due to that Jaguars game where truly with the rest of the games being 22, 22, 30, and 34, it could be a lot higher, but they got held back in that Jags game. So this offense is definitely very, very potent with players like Austin Ekeler, Mike Williams, Gerald Everett, and the potential return of Keenan Allen, although he is currently listed as doubtful, as well as Joshua Palmer. The offense has plenty of weapons to cause trouble for this Denver defense. But the Denver defense certainly won't be backing down, as they currently sit at third for the least amount of yards allowed in the entire league defensively and fourth in points allowed with 16 points per game. So definitely well below what the Chargers have done. But again, something that you do need to take into account, even with a top defense, the Broncos haven't been able to force a lot of turnovers, sitting at 19th in the league. With 6, sorry for the stutter there, with 6 turnovers. So even with being a really good defense and not allowing a lot of points, they're not getting a lot of turnovers. So it's just a fact of them slowing down the offense to where you have to punt it or kick your field goal. And the Chargers, especially the last few games, haven't been slowed down to a point where they're kicking a lot of punts. I think even last game they only punted twice. So pretty solid numbers there. And the fact that the Broncos, even with a great defense, have been able to force a lot of turnovers with 6 total, tied with the Chargers at 19th and a couple other teams. The Broncos defense is not super scary. Now, you can't take away from them. Patrick Surtain has been looking like one of the best cornerbacks in the league, and they have plenty of other guys on the team and a good pass rush that they could force some turnovers, but they just haven't been able to get it rolling quite yet. Now, the Broncos also haven't faced too many crazy explosive offenses, with really the only great explosive offense that they've faced so far being the Raiders offense. And, the Chargers played the Raiders and held them to a semi-low number. And the Broncos, truly, the Raiders are the most explosive offense that the Broncos has faced. And the Broncos allowed 32 points to the Raiders. So it's not like they are able to have shown that they can slow down super explosive offenses consistently. Now, the other games that they have played are, against teams that could have, explosive offenses, but just in the situation they were in didn't, or just poor offenses in general. Let's go through the games game by game. Week 1, they allowed 17 points to the Seahawks, and the Seahawks truly haven't been phenomenal offensively. And although they've been doing very well with Geno Smith coming in the fold right away, DK Metcalf, and plenty of options there, they have not been a super great offense. Next up, they had the Texans, who they held to 9. And as we know, the Texans definitely aren't great offensively with Davis Mills and really no one else that's really memorable outside of their RB room. Not too much to really worry about there. The 49ers, the Broncos held to 10 points, beating them by 11 to 10. Now, the 49ers in that game, I believe, was the game where Jimmy Garoppolo kind of came into things and Trey Lance got hurt. I think that was that game, or maybe that was the first game that Jimmy started. But that offense definitely wasn't in the groove of things and expecting, fully ready for Jimmy Garoppolo to be in the starting position at that point. So the 49ers offense definitely wasn't firing on all cylinders that they normally would be. The next game against the Raiders, who have Devontae Adams, Derek Carr, Darren Waller, Josh Jacobs, plenty of guys, and by far the most firepower they faced, they allowed 32 points, as mentioned. And in their most recent game, they played the Colts on Thursday Night Football, and they allowed 12 points in a loss to the Colts, who didn't have Jonathan Taylor, who have Matt Ryan, who's been throwing a ton of interceptions, and an offense that really hasn't had a whole lot going for them outside Jonathan Taylor. So, yes, they've held, multiple teams below 20 points. Actually, only 2 teams have scored 17 or more on them. But they really haven't faced any offenses that you would expect to be scoring a ton of points. So the fact is, yes, their defense has been looking really, really good, but the Chargers are by far going to be the most, explosive offense they're going to be having faced. So we're going to really see how great this Broncos defense can be in this game. Now, the next thing here is going to be back on the Broncos offense side of things, and it's going to be the fact that the Broncos red zone offense has struggled immensely. Denver currently sits at last in the league of red zone efficiency, only scoring on 21% of red zone trips. 21%. Less than a quarter of the time they're scoring when they're in the red zone. League average sits somewhere around 40 to the 50 range, and they're by far below that, half of that. And with, plenty of guys, as mentioned, Jerry Jeudy, Courtland Sutton, both pretty solid wide receivers, and as mentioned, Courtland Sutton's sitting at 6th in the league. You would expect them to have a little bit more, and especially with a running back room that isn't anything to really scoff at. They have plenty of guys, maybe not the best, but they have guys in there that can go and score. They just haven't been able to score even when they're in the red zone, which is a spot that gives you a lot of leeway with only 20 yards to go. But not only that, but on multiple occasions, the Broncos have turned the ball over when they're in the red zone, including multiple goal line fumbles, even at the 1 yard line fumbles from Melvin Gordon. And as all Chargers fans know, that's not too uncommon. Now, it is good to mention here that Melvin Gordon is questionable to play in this game, which would shift it down to the Broncos' third string running back, fourth string running back, if Melvin's not able to play, which is only going to slow down their offense even more. And for the Chargers, they have done a great job at bend, don't break defense, allowing teams to get into the red zone, but holding them back from scoring, even getting their own turnovers in the red zone, such as Alohi Gilman's interception he had in the end zone last game to ice the game for the Chargers against the Browns. Now, they have done a great job at this bend, don't break defense. The Chargers have. And they've done that against some pretty solid offenses. I mean, truly very solid offenses. They have allowed near league average of a 58% red zone efficiency for other team offenses. So, although that's plenty above, almost three times the amount that the Broncos have averaged in the red zone at 58% for the Chargers defense, they've been facing multiple, pretty potent offenses that they went against. The Raiders, who the Broncos allowed 32 against, the Chargers faced week 1. Then they faced the Chiefs, which looked very good. The Jaguars looked very solid for, a lot better than most people expected and very good against the Chargers. Then the Texans, who have not been very great by any means, and the Browns, who honestly have been very consistent in their offensive approach, even without their starter and Deshaun Watson. So those are 4, at least, competent offenses, even elite level offenses in the Chiefs, who the Chargers have already went against, and they're averaging right around league average for red zone efficiency. Now they're going to be going against one of the worst offenses in the red zone efficiency. I expect them to, likely keep them in that lower range and keep them around that 25% mark. Maybe a little bit above what the Broncos are used to, but the fact is, I just think that the Chargers are going to be able to continue to keep that Broncos offense at a low number, especially when they're in the red zone. Now, still talking about the offense, Russell Wilson has been struggling a lot. After expectations from Denver raised to one of the highest levels it's been in a long time since they had Peyton Manning, talks of being an MVP candidate potentially, being a Super Bowl candidate potentially, there's been a lot of struggles so far this year. Russ sits at 13th in the league in passing yards, and, that's not terrible. You're right above league average, but it's definitely not what was expected from him. Russ also sits all the way at 30th among quarterbacks with 50 attempts in completion percentage. So what I mean by that is, in all quarterbacks that have had at least 50 attempts at passing the ball, he sits 30th in the league in completion percentage with a 59% completion rate, which is not terrible. And I know it sounds like it's terrible because he sits at 30th in the league, but truly sitting right at 60% with 80% being like elite level and 60% through 5 games with an offense that isn't quite clicking yet, whether that be coaching or wise. It's not terrible. It's definitely not great, but that number is going to go up at some point. Russ, he's good enough where it's going to get into that 70 range as the year goes on. But for being at 60 right now definitely is not a good sign for him, especially going against a Chargers offense that, defense that's been pretty consistent at slowing down elite level quarterbacks. I mean, Derek Carr didn't do great against the Chargers. Patrick Mahomes definitely did below his average. So the fact that Russ is already at 60%, he's probably going to be kept in that lower range once again. Now, he also sits at 26th in the league of QB rate, which is a controversial, statistic, but being 26th in the league certainly isn't a good sign for him. And Russ only has 4 passing touchdowns on the year, and that's tied for 23rd, but he also has 3 interceptions, which means he is just barely above a 1-to-1 ratio for touchdowns to interceptions, which by no means is a good sign. I mean, we're talking about like Jameis Winston 30 for 30 type things before he got moved out of, the Buccaneers. So it's certainly not a good sign, but at some point, especially with an extended week and a half long break, I think this week might be the week that he starts getting on the right track but I don't know if he's definitely going to take a huge leap forward. And the last thing I want to talk about here is going to be outside the predictions, which we will get to in a second. Last thing I want to talk about for the keys to success is, the fact that the Broncos have truly kind of failed to produce offensively as a whole. Now, I don't even need to talk about Chargers defense, and I think this Chargers defense is definitely very good, and I think can reach that top 10 level this year, maybe even top 5 if they can start getting things clicking on the coaching to players and working together wise. I think they could reach top 5, but right on the edge of being a top 10 defense. I don't even want to talk about them. This is only Broncos stats I want to talk about here. We mentioned the Broncos' lack of red zone scoring ability, but in reality, the entirety of the offense is just not producing at a good level at all. The Broncos have allowed the 7th most sacks in the league with 16. The Chargers, just bring it up, Khalil Mack and the rest of this defense has been very good. So could cause a problem there. The Broncos are also 4th worst in first down percentage, which means whenever they get the ball and it's a new set of downs, how likely are they to get a first down? Well, they're 4th worst in the league, so it's not very likely for them to get a first down when they're put in that position. They're 10th lowest in completions. They're 13th worst in rushing yards, which isn't a great sign at all, especially since their passing game is not doing great. They're tied for 2nd worst in rushing fumbles with 4. They're the 2nd lowest rushing touchdowns with only 2, and 3rd lowest receiving touchdowns with only 4, which as a whole puts the Broncos at the worst scoring offense in the league with only 6 touchdowns. The Broncos have attempted the 3rd most 3rd down attempts, and with the 3rd most attempts of 72, they have the 7th least 3rd down conversions with only 22, which puts them at a 31% 3rd down conversion rate, which is just extremely poor. Now, let's move on to the predictions here. And my predictions for this game is going to be that the Chargers defense holds the Broncos offense to another low-scoring affair, somewhere around that 20 range, while also forcing 3 turnovers, whether that be on the ground game or in the passing game. Austin Eckler also will continue to have an excellent scoring game and have at least 2 touchdowns, whether that be on the ground or in the air. I think he's going to get 2 touchdowns, and quite more than likely it's going to be 1 and 1. And with the offense for the Chargers having started to click, I think Herbert's going to finally get that 4-touchdown game, which I don't believe he's had quite yet this year. Now, in total, the final game score for me prediction is going to be Chargers 35 to Broncos 22, with Chargers scoring, plenty more than what the Broncos are used to and more than the Broncos have faced all year, and the Chargers still allowing somewhere around league average. I think Broncos will have one of their best offensive games scoring-wise, but I don't think they're going to be looking good. I think they're just going to get a couple late in the 4th quarter. I think they're definitely going to score 1 touchdown on one of the last few drives there to bring them to that 22 mark, even though most of the game they're going to be at that 2-touchdown range. But that's my predictions. What are your predictions for the game? How well do you think this Chargers defense is going to do? How well do you think the Chargers offense is going to do? What are your predictions for this game? If you enjoy this content, please like and subscribe. It truly means the world to me. And as always, I hope it taught something today. Hope it made you smile. Hope it made you laugh. It's something really important to me. Affects most day in a great way, because every single day can be a great day if you all just put in the effort. And as always, you guys all be safe out there.
But something deep inside